been very fortunate in being able to be to experience your parenthood as a very young man, and then 30 years on.
Yes.
That's a very unique experience.
It is a unique experience. Of course, what it does leave me with is a huge regret to a certain extent of what happened, you know, that I wasn't there more for my son when he was very young, you know, that I missed the first 5 or 6 years completely, really, you know, because I was continually on tour. I was just touring all the time. And I can't allow that to happen again.
So is she coming to your tour?
Oh, you bet, yeah. No, I'm going to force her.
Are you going to force her, yeah?
Force her to be in the wings every night. No, but she'll be in and out with her mother, of course, in and out of the tour throughout the tour, you know. The periods we have, with so-called legs of the tour, enable me to get home and spend more time at home, and there are periods when they can come to whatever continent I'm on, and they can be centrally based and I can get back.
Does she understand your position in the world?
Absolutely no idea. No.
She doesn't have?
Absolutely not. No, she knows.
You try to protect her from this knowledge?
She's too young. She has no... she knows I kind of mess about with guitars and piano. I was she...
But you know, tomorrow it happens. Tomorrow she'll know.
Yeah, but that'll, you know, we'll face that when we get to it. But it's not... At the moment, I think she's delighted that I do that stuff. That music is kind of in there. That's great. And
you know, your face change when you speak about her.
Well.
No, but you have experience from your older son. Do you think it's a shadow, or is it tougher to be David Bowie's son or daughter?
I hope that I gave him some. I hope I gave him some good earth to stand on by not subjecting him to media. You know, he never had to go through all that, because I was really quite cautious about him being sort of, you know, thrown into the lion's den, you know, which I feel it's, that's my personal responsibility, I feel. So if he wants to be involved in any aspect of a high-profile existence, then it's decidedly his choice. But he can remain not in that if he wishes to as well.
And what did he choose?
Well, he's making films, but behind the camera. He has no wish to be in front of it. And so that was his choice, and I think it's a very good one.
And you were speaking, it was very interesting for me to hear you speak about the change in perspective through your daughter, through your feeling, seeing things through her eyes.
Yeah.
10 years from now.
Yeah.
12. Now, when you, if you can, compare the childhood she has, not personally, but as a child in these, you know, troubled times, to your own, do you think she has a better one?
I have no way of paralleling the existences. That's very much, I think it's chalk and cheese, as we say in England. I think they're so very, very different. Because of these circumstances, because of the context, the eras are so distant to each other, it's very hard to relate the two entirely. My background was fairly humble, in as much it was pretty much working class. Not that my father was particularly working class, but what he chose to do for a living didn't enable us to live in anything but a working class circumstance, because he worked for a charity organisation, children's homes, and there was no pay, you know, so the house that, you know, the area we were in was very working class. So I think at that, even at the basic economic level, it's so vastly different. Yeah. My daughter, of course, has her own castle. No, it's not quite like that, believe me. Yeah. But of course, you know, from the material basis, it's very different. The structure of the household is very different. I mean, this is a musical household. It's, you know, my parents, it was not a musical household. Both my mother and father worked for a living, you know, and at different times in my life, in my younger life. There were periods where I was a latchkey kid, where I, you know, let myself into the house and, you know, wait for somebody to come home and all that. She's not going to be going through all that, you know. It's just so different, you know.
But
it really is.
I get the feeling that you enjoy your parenthood now in a very, very deep way.
I do. I mean, it was a real commitment, and it was really thought through. There was no, it was so important for me to, well, firstly, you know, the relationship itself within my marriage it came about because I was feeling that I was in a far more stable place. I had changed, and then we got married. It wasn't a question of we got married and I changed, you know. I don't think I would have gotten married if I'd felt that I was still pretty unstable. Things were still not really right, kind of emotionally in my life, you know. I underwent some major changes during the course of the 80s. And the same thing applies to my daughter. I really needed our lives to provide an incredibly strong bedrock for her existence, you know. It was very important to me.
I think if you mentioned love, I think that you speak about love in this album in a way you didn't before.
Yes, not quite so soppy, not soppy love.
Not soppy, but very
tough love.
Lovingly love.
Tough love, lovingly love. Lovingly tough love.
And another topic that I got a feeling that you deal with is age.
Yes, of course. Sure.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I'm not sure if I can elaborate on it. The one song itself that sort of obviously is germane to that is Never Get Old, and it really started out as a tongue-in-cheek gesture. I thought it an absurdity for a rocker of 56 to say rather petulantly, "I'm never ever going to get old." It's like, it was just funny. It struck me as a very funny line. Always going to be enough drugs. It was just funny, but it became a stronger piece when I wrote it, and it actually feels quite a demanding piece. I'm surprised at its strength now. It really has some kind of weight behind it. I don't think it's from anger, not on my part, but it has a kind of, this is a real resolute kind of decision by this guy.
Anger, I would say not anger, but hunger.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, possibly hunger for every last drop of life that he can get. I think that's in there. But, I mean, in general terms, I'm feeling very... I have this theory about age, you see, with my generation anyway. Here we go. It's something... The premise is that my generation were the first generation to devise some feeble manifesto in the 60s. I mean, I was a teenager of the 60s. And our platform was for independence, for thought and deed, and sexuality and politics, and abuse of the body in any other way that we wanted to. We wanted to pull apart and form some kind of new alternative society. These were the flowers of the manifesto at that time. But what it's produced is a very independent-minded generation of people, I think, who, interestingly enough, took along with them their love of pop and rock music, so that you get, for the first time, my generation who have complete empathy with what our children are listening to, and in fact can go through their record collections and say, don't like that, that's good, but their first album was better, that's good, that... with some considerable knowledge of what their children are listening to. Likewise, the children can look through, my son, for instance, can look through my collection and find a Jimi Hendrix album and say, oh, I'll have that. And John Lennon, or, you know, he can pull out stuff from that album and relate to it.
Both dead, by the way.
Yes, unfortunately. Or, that was a good album of yours, Dad. Scary Monsters, that was a good one. I can actually pull them out, and there is a real overlap culturally at that point, which has never happened musically with generations before. It's always been one generation, you know, if I went through my mother's collection of records, it would be South Pacific and, you know, this stuff. And I was saying, well, no Little Richard. You know, it's kind of, there was no way that chasm could be bridged.
But so now does it come to the hysteria with time, with age, with getting old?
Well, it's just that we don't lose touch with each other in quite the same way, I think, the young and the old. I think the young are rather bemused by the fact that some of their fathers and mothers are more kind of excitedly going about life than they themselves are. I mean, you know, we my age group look at the slacker generation and think, get up off your asses. You know? But there's another thing that's happening with young people is that there's a very strong work ethic appearing that actually I don't see in my generation at all. There's a commitment to having a career, you know, which really is quite startling.
Anyway, we have to finish, so I want to wish you and myself to interview you in 20 years from now.
That would be... I've made a note of it.
Thank you very much for this
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.